There are a ton of starting off light tanks that every person must try, but this one right here is probably the best free light tank that will teach you both how to play a light tank as well as get you involved in the medium / light tank hybrid playstyle that you will probably play. And this is, of course, the Tier 6 T-37. It's the American light tank, leading on to, of course, the Sheridan. And this tank is actually quite an interesting one because not only was it a original Tier 5 light tank that then got moved up to Tier 6, it used to be called something else, and then, of course, they moved the Chaffee down to Tier 5. Basically, there was a bit of a rearrangement with regards to where they put the tiers of the light tanks, and this is what we ended up with in that this is the original. But the Tier 6 T-37 is very, very good. And we're going to have some incredible replays coming up in this video. But most importantly, why is this tank so good? Why is it one of the tanks that is very good to learn how to play light tanks? Because there are various different Tier 6 light tanks that are very, very good. Some of them are premium tanks, unfortunately. Things like the Snakebite, which are super fast, but don't really play necessarily like a light tank, even though technically they are. You have things like the French wheeled vehicles, which are not particularly very good, or they're not particularly very easy to get a hang of. And I guess my kind of close competitor would be something like the AMX-12T, which is also a very, very solid Tier 6 light tank for those of you wondering what other vehicles I'd recommend. And we'll do a video on the AMX-12T and in fact all of the French light tanks coming up to Tier 10, and maybe we'll do that in one video or something like that. If you guys would think that that would be a good idea as to cover an entire line in a video, let me know. But more importantly, back to the T-37. This tank is one of the special vehicles that I think World of Tanks players, especially people that have played back in the day, will really like to see. And yes, I went ahead and 3-marked it probably years ago, to be honest with you. It was probably one of my first light tanks that I ever played, which is why it was probably 3-marked, but nowadays don't usually have time to actually 3-mark a vehicle just because you have to play 70 games in one tank or etc, so it takes a lot of my time, that of which I don't typically have with working a full-time job and of course doing lots of videos with various different tanks throughout all of the tech trees etc. But the T-37, this tank has a great combination of both camo but also having the view range whilst also having this fast firing gun that will teach you a lot about having to aim, weak points of vehicles, learning where the typical weak points are, very good at being able to teach you how to double track opponents. And I think as a general rule, I really implore people to get out of their TDs and actually start playing some of the more interesting classes. Yes, they're very difficult to play to begin with, but you'll learn a ton playing in light tanks and medium tanks. And no, I'm not just saying YOLO in, because we'll see some other light tanks doing exactly that, and YOLOing in light tanks doesn't work. But most importantly, how have we set up this tank to make it work? And of course we'll get into how you can use the tank in the gameplay, and not just for Tier 6 light tanks and this one in particular. We're going to have a look at typical light tank positions and stuff like that in this video. But advanced optics is what we've gone with, almost a must on basically all of your light tanks. You want to make sure you have the maximum view range possible such that you can spot people regardless of the camo and the bushes that they might be sat in. That's basically what happens after you reach the view range cap. What's the view range cap? It's the big circle on your minimap. You'll see that there's a big white circle and the edge of kind of your, I guess, where your view range is, and that is like your maximum circle, and of course where the green cone is, that's where you'll actually be able to spot to, and basically having more view range than 440 meters will allow you to then spot things that are behind bushes, and essentially spot people. Even though you can't spot anyone further than 440 meters, you'll spot them easier within that radius, if that makes sense. So essentially it just makes it much easier to spot people within the region based on whether they're sat in a bush. But what else you get? We went with Camonet just for probably because I was not having the most amount of silver at the time, but also because I like running my advanced optics and advanced concealment in the game when I play my light tanks. Primarily because the accuracy of this tank is 0.34, which is not the best in the game, but at the same time, because we're going to be running it as a run and gun sort of tank, and because we have a lot of the commander perks and stuff like that when we were playing this tank, we didn't necessarily need gun stabilizer, although it is something that you could potentially use and swap out your concealment. But for me, getting the concealment down as much as possible, because this is quite a big light tank, is really important, and that allows us to get 295 meters still concealment whilst also having that really nice view range as well. There are potential uses in taking traction system or using things like advanced powertrain, but they're probably further down the list than a lot of other tanks that I've seen where I would actually use this on. Improved ventilation, yet again something you could use. Maybe you'd actually swap out advanced loader just so that you get better view range and just better performance of the tank in general, in terms of camo as well, because improved ventilation does help you out in the camo regard. As far as additional things, we were actually running it with camo, which gives you 3% better camouflage, which will bring that still concealment down by 3%, which is also nice, but we haven't actually got it applied since it was a while, or over 7 days since we actually played in the replays that you're going to see in a minute. But overall, this tank plays very, very nice. It has that fast firing gun, which allows you to retrack, keep people locked in place, whilst also being able to deal damage from close quarters, get round people. It doesn't have good penetration, 126 on the standard rounds and 160 on the premium, with only 115 damage. But this is where you'll learn weak points and stuff like that, because you basically are forced to have to find them. We did run a few premium rounds in this tank, primarily because I had the credits to be able to do so, and we pretty much earn silver back every time, even if I was to fire exclusive premium in basically every tank I play. But of course, your own silver economy and stuff like that depends on your own account, etc. But I mean, a couple of games in Cold War and you'll be able to fire premium in this thing for like 50 games. So yeah, there's not really any problems in that, and I definitely recommend it, because 126 pen in a tier 8 game, yeah, it sucks. But more importantly, how do we play it? How can you play light tanks? Why is it a good introduction to light tanks? Well, let's get into the gameplay and we can talk about it there. Our first matchup then is on Ruinberg, and yes, you might be thinking, why is he showing a game in a light tank on Ruinberg? Well, because hey ho, light tanks do actually get town maps from time to time, things like Himmelsdorf and of course Ruinberg, and with the introduction of more map regarding like heavy tank maps, essentially with a lot of things like Ensk hopefully coming back to the game at some point, you do need to learn how to play your light tanks on these more heavy style maps where a lot of heavy tanks will just dominate. And so unlike this MT25 on the enemy team, we are not just going to YOLO into the enemy's base. This is case in point, point number one of how not to play a light tank, which apparently the Rover also decided that he's going to join in on the action. And essentially this is a surefire way at the higher tiers to basically end up in your garage 90% faster than anyone else on your team. And that is really something that you don't want to be doing. The light tanks are very, very deadly in the later stages of the game, because they just are so much better at being able to get around vehicles, at trading in the late stages where you can get around, maybe the enemy team miss the shell on you, and then you can basically farm them from behind. You're up close and personal, and you can get around behind where penetration no longer matters. So we stay a little bit further back in this game, but not too far back where we're not able to get any action. You have to find like a medium kind of area, and also in kind of pushing up into those medium areas, sometimes you can spot enemy tanks, like for example this T-3485 and of course the tank destroyer that we spotted earlier as we made our way up. Now, we've only taken one hit, but we've done 1,150 damage, and all we've done is counter the enemy light tanks. That's why you never really want to be the first one forward when you are playing in a tank like this. And we didn't actually have to fire any premium in this game, to be honest. It's just because we literally had no standard rounds left. And so we had to dip into those premium rounds, which is not ideal. And you'll find that in tanks like this, where you need those premium rounds when you're playing in higher tier games, but sometimes you'll find yourself spending a lot more money than you needed to in the kind of bottom tier games, or like where you're top tier and you're fighting up against tier 4s and stuff like that. So yeah, not ideal, but it is the I guess the trial of playing light tanks and low tiers in general, to be honest. But you could see it's very easy to rack up damage at the beginning of the game, provided that you stay far enough back, you use your camo, your view range, and you just basically farm up opponents that, you know, think that they're going to be able to deal damage to you, or that you're going to YOLO in. And as they do that, they give you a lot of opportunity to hit some shots. And that's exactly what we've done. I mean, this is literally the best trade that you could probably hope for in a tank like this. We've taken one hit to be able to do 1700. That is literally double or 2.5 times the hit points of this tank. And that's with all of the hit point buffs that these vehicles received after they did like the big buff to all of the hit point pools of low tier tanks. So yeah, these tanks are very fun to play, and you almost have to play them like mediums, where sometimes you do have to go in. And you can see here the flank is kind of failing. It's basically me and this other light tank on this side where we just have to go in. I mean, I've got the hit points at this point in the game. We can go in, we can start doing a bit of damage. We do manage to take a couple of hits, which is fine, but in doing that we've now secured this area of the map, and we can essentially now do what we want and go and support the team in however we want to do that. Now at this point, an AMX 13 or the French wheelie, or 1788B or whatever it is, I believe, he decides to go into the town, and unfortunately for him, he is going to meet with one of our other teammates who hopefully will be able to hit us or hit him, unlike we're able to hit him because of my bad aim. But with that being said, what we can do now is start to go into the town area, because yeah, we should be able to start dealing with some of these guys. Now there's an archer in the base who we auto aim because we want to keep moving. We want to get as fast as possible in as quickly as a short a period as time, so that he doesn't have that time to kind of swing his tank around and hit us. And sometimes even if you don't actually manage to get a shot off, it will actually be worth it in the end, because you don't take a hit and they're not going to be able to hit you. Now, I make a bit of a misplay here. Maybe I should have just gone in at that point, and we end up, you know, on 2,500 damage. We miss our shell on the captured KV-1, but that's fine. Maybe I could have actually stopped at the corner when I found the captured KV-1, but you never know. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't do anything silly, so we just continue off round and end up going back behind these guys. And whilst I come around this corner, we're hoping to get one into the capture KV-1, which we do, and secure our third takeout of the game with 2,581 damage on a town map, remember, which is a 1632 base XP game. Coming top second is the capture KV-1 that we finished off, of course the more broken tier 5 vehicle, but there you go. Of course, it hasn't been so long since I played this tank, as you could see with the marks percentage. I think the last time was probably when I 3 marked it, so gone down 10% since then. So mark requirements have definitely gone up by the looks of things on this vehicle, probably because of all of the damage per minute buffs and view range buffs and all of that sort of jazz. But there you go, first game in this tank. Now let's take the second game to talk about how light tanks can be played in general, and not just on a map like this, and how you can get early game damage. Now then, this is a bit more of a favourable map for playing light tanks, which is hopefully going to yield us a much better result, and this is definitely going to do that. But as you can see, when you are playing on a better light tank map like Malinovka, you have the flexibility to use your light tank speed as well as the camo and concealment to come away with some fantastic games, which you just won't get when you are playing town maps. And yes, it does suck sometimes. Sometimes you do have to play your light tanks like a medium, which is obviously not how they're supposed to be played in general, but sometimes you're forced to do that based on the map, and you will get shafted sometimes by the rotation. Now, I do go for a shot here, probably not really worth it. We could get hit here if one of the tanks is actually pre-aiming the bush, but at the end of the day, I'm playing lower tiers and most people don't actually have a brain, which is, yeah, I guess because they're new. I'm not going to blame it on the actual skill level, etc. But you can see we get a little bit of assist. This is a great bush at the beginning of the game to spot people. And spot people we do. We find ourselves a nice little Tiger P, who we go for a tracking shot on. We actually track him as well as spot him. And then hopefully the team can hit this guy. Otherwise we end up getting like no assistance damage. but at the same time we can pull around here, but next to the Bellerophon we're going to go for the actual damage here. We want a bit of damage, we want to make sure that we are going to be able to deal some damage. And you saw there we were aiming for the tracks. This is something that you must do in your light tanks. If you want to have insanely good games and you want to be able to get both assistance and actual damage, yeah, going for tracking assist is immensely powerful for boosting up your marks of excellence, especially on maps where you are probably not going to be able to spot for your team. Now, unfortunately, if you're going for marks of excellence, for example, the tracking assist and actual assistance by spotting vehicles don't actually stack together. It's either the top of your assistance damage or your tracking damage. So whichever is larger, they'll take as the value in combination with your actual damage. So they don't combine the tracked assist and the actual assist. So say if you did 2000 tracking and assistance damage with 1000 of each, you'll actually only get 1000 towards your marks of excellence when it calculates it at the end of the game. Whereas if you got 2000 spotting assist, you will actually get 2000 assists combined in with your actual damage that game, and vice versa with the tracking damage as well. But in this game, you can see we have lost the western side of the map, which means we have two options. We can either go in and try and spot for the team who, as you could see earlier, can't seem to hit anyone. So my first thought is, how did the team perform earlier? Probably not very good. So I am not going to throw myself away hoping that my team are going to support me by the onslaught of vehicles that are going to come on the west. Instead, I'm going to try and get a little bit of damage on the people that are going to advance, because this game looks like we are going to lose. Our team have gone down the hill, which is the ultimate no-no on Malinovka. Once you've won the hill, you don't need to go down the hill. It is literally a sentence to your own grave and going back to the garage. So don't go down the hill when you win the hill. You want to use it and then use that advantage to farm opponents that are going to be able to have to, you know, dig you out of the hill area. The only time that you really go down the hill is actually to go down back to your own cap circle to defend it. But as you can see, our team have basically been farmed by all of the TDs that are camping in their base and all of the mediums that are in the middle and stuff like that. And this is why you just don't go down the hill when you win it, because they've turned a winning game into a losing one, which is yeah, very, very good. Now, you can see there we went for a shot on the little Chaffee, I guess, or the T-37 there. And we managed to hit him. Of course, blind firing in these sorts of tanks is fine. You've got loads of rounds. You've also got a fast fire rate, so you don't really miss out on anything when you do fire because of that really short reload time. And that makes these tanks just super, super powerful for those kind of late game plays. Now, we've done 1900 damage in this game, which is a good one, but we can start farming up even more. And all it takes is just basically being in the right place at the right time and just making sure that you are kind of optimally I guess, looking for where the enemy tanks are going to be. Now, unfortunately for me, I was not actually running premium consumables or any consumables for that matter, and that is because, yep, I ran out of silver when I was playing this tank. Yeah, may have made the mistake of literally playing the tank when I had about 40,000 silver in the bank, and of course, if you have a bad game or anything like that, then you are quickly going to lose that silver quite nicely. When you know, it's just basically I had no silver to even resupply my ammunition. Even though I probably did, it's just that if you don't have the full total cost to resupply the ammunition, Wargaming don't actually resupply it until, you know, you actually go in and use your silver yourself. Now, the Mantis has missed a few shots. He's not actually able to fire another one. We then bounce off of him with that one. I mean, it would have been lucky to hit him, but that's fine. And we're going to go for a little bit more damage on the Skoda T25, but Amarak is not going to help at all, and we only managed to get one more into him, picking up 3,500 combined damage, which is a good result either way, and of course showing you that even in tier 8 games you can farm up opponents whilst making 28 silver. And of course, yeah, a decent result for sure, coming top of the team in the tier 8 game, having the most damage on your team. Yeah, maybe wasn't helped out too much by our teammates here, but at the end of the day, maybe we could have played slightly better and of course actually had equipment in our tank. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video on one of the weirdest and probably the best light tank to at least try and learn the game and I'll get more enjoyment from playing light tanks and mediums, and just a great way to learn light tank mechanics and stuff like that. Of course, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section down below, and thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.